Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar this morning, the iSherff and Soteria Intelligence webinar. My name is John Much. I'm the CEO of iSherff, and I'm very pleased this morning to be joined by Aaron Schoenberger, the CEO and founder of Soteria Intelligence. And today we're going to talk about an interesting project that we're working on that's going to bring dramatic innovation to the security space. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the most pressing issues facing our customer set in terms of security, penetration, hacks, and a very interesting dynamic and trend around the ability to use predictive analytics to do a better job of providing security to our customers. So first, a little bit about us. Next slide, Ed. My name is John Much, as I mentioned. I'm the CEO of iSherff. iSherff is a small but innovative technology leader, primarily delivering a cloud-based solution that allows you to cover 3 threat vectors. My background includes running HNC Software, which in the late 1990s, mid-2000s, was the largest enterprise analytics company in the world, so a strong background with predictive technology. I've also spent time in both the infrastructure space and the security space, most recently running a company called Beyond Trust, which was focused on least privilege management and identity management in the enterprise. Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Good day. My name is Aaron Schoenberger. I'm the founder and CEO of Soteria Intelligence. My background really goes back to the early days of social media, when really social media was message boards in the 90s. And from that point, I had different career paths that I took. I worked for Mary-Kate and Ashley's company, Dual Star Entertainment Group, doing marketing in-house, right when social media marketing was starting to take off. After that, I had grown 2 automotive aftermarket companies. One of them in particular, we did software tuning for cars. At a certain point in 2007, I launched a marketing and consulting practice that I grew to working with large organizations ranging from billion-dollar celebrity brands to Fortune 100 companies. And really I saw a big need in the market for predictive analytics and using social media data, not just for marketing or customer service, but for improving physical security as well as cybersecurity. So that's why I launched Soteria Intelligence in 2014. It's really a pleasure to be here today with John, and I'm looking forward to describing more about how our companies are going to work together.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. We are excited to be here together, and Aaron and I have spent a couple of years conceptualizing and ideating some of the information we're going to share with you today, which is really about combining social media threat assessment and a proliferation of predictive indicators to enable our customer set to, in fact, predict or anticipate an attack, a threat, rather than sit back and be reactive. Next slide, if you would, Ed. As everybody is aware, there's a fairly dramatic change in the security problem, and as all of us involved in the industry, we recognize these trends. There are purely more attacks, a greater absolute number. They're more dynamic and more complex. Hackers are getting craftier and craftier. The move to a proliferation of devices, while very exciting for all of us in IT and technology, really creates a broader threat platform for attackers. So the IoT infrastructure, mobile devices, etc., simply provide a broader surface plane for threats. We understand that many of our customers, particularly those of friends of ours in the small and medium enterprise segment, have limited resources and staff to cope. And quite frankly, we're doing a job where it's very difficult to keep people from attacking and preventing those attacks. And that's given rise to this whole issue around dwell time, which is the time between when a virus actually penetrates an IT organization and when it spawns. And dwell time is a major issue for many of our customers. And then what we're really finding is that many of these attacks through what's now called ransomware that everybody's familiar with are targeted at these small and medium enterprises. They're encrypting vital data that's critical to a company's business performance, and interestingly demanding very small amounts of ransom to de-encrypt that data. And the whole goal there is to make the amount small enough that you won't think twice about paying, and basically be able to attack many customers and demand a small sum. But here's the interesting thing for Aaron and I and Soteria and iSherff. What we're seeing is that predictive indicators are proliferating. Information around targets, around energy building to direct attacks at companies is now becoming visible through a number of social media channels and through a number of content and information sources that can actually be tapped in to do a better job of anticipating attack, strengthening your defenses, understanding that you have been attacked, and how to deal with that in the dwell time period. And that's what we're going to drill into today in a pretty big way. So let's take a look at what the problem is.
Now to a hostage and ransom story for the digital age. A medical center in California forced to pay cyber criminals thousands of dollars to gain back control of its computers. It's a trend called ransomware. Hackers infecting computers with malware, then demanding payment from the user to regain access. And as NBC's Tom Costello reports, it could happen to you.
It happened at Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center, all of its computers frozen, with hackers demanding $17,000 in ransom payable in online bitcoins to release the computers. Locked out, the hospital CEO says in the best interest of restoring normal operations, we did this. Across the country in Maine, hackers even held the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department computers hostage.
They ask for, we'll gladly give you the code to unencrypt it for a nominal fee.
Even the cops had no choice but to pay up $300 to get their data back.
As this warning is appearing on the screen, they've already encrypted most of the information on your system.
Cybersecurity pro James Line says ransomware is now big business, encrypting corporate and government files, family photos, health records, and financial documents, then demanding payment for the code to unlock them. Becoming a victim is as easy as a bad mouse click on a pop-up window, email, or web link.
This would be the data on my computer I can't access anymore.
Right, any of the files, whether they're photos, Excel files, everything is no longer accessible.
Intel Security reports a 127% jump in ransomware cases in just the last year.
It's a high volume, high speed game that these guys are playing. That's the business model that they're using right now.
To avoid having your data held hostage, security pros recommend updating your antivirus software, enabling your pop-up blockers, and backing up your computer on an external drive. With the hackers often a world away, if you are hacked, you may have no choice but to pay the ransom. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
So that's a cute little video about a trend that we all recognize as security professionals, and it's interesting to us. One of our target segments is healthcare, and what we're seeing is these hits are really targeting the healthcare system, primarily because healthcare generally has traditionally spent less than 10% on cybersecurity. Last month we saw prime healthcare organizations hit by hackers, which included Desert Valley Hospital, Chino Valley Medical Center, and Alvarado Hospital Medical Center. And so you can see that attack on those small regional organizations is a prime focus for the bad guys. Symantec released some data recently saying there was an average of 1,000 ransomware attacks per day in 2015, an increase of 35% over the prior year. So obviously this issue is proliferating, it's accelerating in velocity, and it presents an interesting challenge for us as security professionals. As we move to the next slide, I want to turn it over to Aaron to talk a little bit about the front end, social media, and the infrastructure that we can use to help predict and anticipate these attacks.
Thank you, John. So looking here, I'm going to take you back to 2010 when I really realized that threats on social networks would become a serious problem. At this time in 2010, around I'd say January, February, I had one of the large financial institutions contact my marketing consulting practice and ask for a security audit basically on social media, ask us to do a deep dive and see what we could come up with that could potentially be a risk to the company or the brand or to security for different branches. And we were able to look on Instagram and find a photo of a teller who checked in at this particular geolocation at this branch of the bank holding stacks of cash inside the vault. And then an alarm really went off, and I realized that threats on social media, whether they're threats of physical violence, cybersecurity, even things that aren't posted meaning to be a threat, but they are threatening, I realized all of these things are really going to take off. And in 2012, a huge spike occurred where schools started to receive social media threats, celebrities, corporations, airlines, a wide variety of threats were being posted. And really in the past 6 to 8 months, I'd say, almost 3 times the amount of threats have been in news headlines just because the amount of social media threats that are occurring nowadays. So I want to go to the next slide here and talk a little bit more about what exactly these threats are. This right here is really an extreme. In New York, there was an individual, Ishmael Brinsley, who posted on Instagram this image as well as another image of blood-stained pants. But looking at this image in particular, you could see on the top right of the image, it says Brooklyn, New York. So this individual checked in, geotagged this post in Brooklyn, New York. He said that he's going to, if you see the hashtag, shoot the police, put pigs in a blanket, and really, when you look at this, this is the easiest type of threat to identify on social media. There's a picture of a gun, someone says they're going to shoot the police, they're checking in a specific location, but unfortunately this wasn't picked up in time, and a little over 3 hours after this was posted, he walked up to 2 NYPD officers that were sitting in their car in Brooklyn and shot both of them in the head, killing both. And this was a sign for me that, you know, really more needs to be done. This happened a couple of years ago, and this is really why Soteria Intelligence is working so hard to develop technologies to identify things like this, as well as potential cyber attacks on social media before the incidents occur, so we could save companies money and also save lives in the end. Let's go on to the next slide here, and I want to talk a little more about threats against airlines. So in January of 2015, there was over 50 threats against airlines, various airlines, within a few-week period. Delta Airlines was hit very hard. And looking at this post in particular, I want to break down this post on Twitter so everyone can understand the types of things that we're looking at on social media to really understand who people are, where they may be located, the credibility of the things that they're posting, and really what their true intentions are. So looking at this post, the individual's name, Junaid, it means warrior or soldier. Now, for someone to know that, they must be familiar with the language. But going at, looking at their actual handle, Allahu Akbar, Akbar is spelled incorrectly. It should be A-K-B-A-R. The other thing is, the inclusion of 911, to think about making a threat and putting that in there, and to know to put 911 versus any other combination of numbers, it seems to hint that this person has some sort of knowledge or information maybe on the emergency system here in North America, potentially. So that's just one data point. Now, going into the actual tweet that they posted, this is absolutely 100% opposite of ISIS's characteristics when they carry out attacks. They never warn that an attack's coming like this. Afterwards, they'll commit, they'll inspire people to commit attacks, or they themselves, or operatives will, and they'll claim responsibility for the attack after. But never do they say something like this, where there's a bomb on a plane, we are ISIS, we are here, you won't be. Their goal is to carry out the attack and cause actual harm and death, not to alert authorities so they could potentially thwart the attack before it occurs, especially if they're mentioning the flight number. So this is the type of thing where you could look at a tweet and you could say, based on some of these data points, this is credible, it's not credible, and really understand more about the person that's posting these types of threats. The next slide has another example that I think is really good to look at. King Zortic, he was one of the original people that was posting threats against airlines, not just Delta, also Southwest and some of the other airlines. But you look at little nuances like entrances, spelling it with the E, and what our technologies do are look at patterns like that. Maybe this person in King Zortic is posting a variety of threats at one time on a variety of channels, but little linguistic patterns that our technologies could pick up. For example, just the misspelling of entrances. Maybe he's repeating this constantly. He believes this is how that word is spelled, and he's making threats on a variety of channels. We can connect the dots and really link things back to him potentially and say, okay, this is the same person, and what he's posting is either credible or not credible. Looking at the next slide, so this is what ended up happening with Delta. King Zortic was using certain linguistic patterns, in particular leet speak, where back in the late 90s when I worked at an internet cafe, I was actually paid to sit there all day long and eat candy and play video games and tinker with the computer. Best job ever. But I learned a lot about the gaming community, hacking groups, and just the terminology that we used. We really implemented leet speak. Even back when pagers first came out, swapping certain numbers, changing letters and numbers and all of that different stuff. Looking at this particular incident, there was certain patterns that we detected in the threats that were posted that, based on profiles that we have already created in our system and different data points that we have, closely associated the people that were making threats, not with ISIS, not with any group that's intent on causing physical harm, but instead with various hacker groups, one in particular. And what we did was we realized that based on the chatter that we saw, the information that our systems were putting out, we realized that Delta would soon become the victim of a cyber attack, whether it's in 1, 2, 3 weeks, whatever it may be. But what ended up happening was, through some form of social engineering, after Delta was targeted, 3 weeks after Delta was targeted with bomb threats on Twitter, their Facebook page was hacked, and this particular post was added, and the word that's blocked out, that's grayed out, the same exact terminology was used in that word right there as in the threats that were posted 3 weeks before that alluded to a potential cyber attack. So what's interesting is that we could look at posts on social networks, break them down, and really understand where people are coming from and how serious the threat may be, and if the threat maybe isn't a physical threat, if it's in fact maybe a cyber threat that's on the horizon. So that's really the core of what we're looking at, is breaking down social media data, looking at the conversations much deeper than other social media intelligence companies do, that basically look at combinations of keywords, trends where there's burst under certain hashtags, things that are very on the surface. So what we're looking to do is work with iSherff to integrate data that really paints a true picture of who people are, and that could help improve security for iSherff's clients. Let's go on to the next slide.
Thanks, Aaron. So on May 12th, iSherff and Soteria Intelligence announced a joint partnership where we're working to integrate the Soteria Intelligence social media threat assessment platform and connect that up to iSherff Complete. And as many of you may be aware, iSherff Complete provides you with endpoint, email, and antivirus protection, as well as URL filtering, web filtering in one integrated platform. We have a very robust reporting, analytics, and what we call big data console. And so the goal of this partnership is to take that front-end assessment capability, anticipate and predict when an attack and energy may be forming around an attack, and then enable our customers to strengthen their security, their defenses across threat vectors, and do a better job of preventing that attack. So if you go to the next slide, what we're really doing very concretely, we'll drill in now a little bit, is the use of social media threat intelligence to predict energy forming around attack targets. So while we may not be able to predict explicitly an attack, if you were the CEO of Sony and 3 weeks prior to the hack attack and encryption, which shut down your servers and disrupted your ability to provide distribution of your movie product, costing you close to $1 billion, if you were able to go out on social media, sense energy forming around an attack, and strengthen your defenses, and you were aware of something going on in the social media and infrastructure world, you would want to know about that. And in fact, in the case of Sony, that was happening. There was quite a bit of noise, quite a bit of chatter that could have been picked up on.
And John, I'll add a couple things too there.
Sure.
Looking at a few other incidents, I think most people are thinking, how can you really look at social media data and be able to predict impending attacks? And you look at the Umpqua College shooting, there was signs on social media beforehand. You look at the Paris attacks that ISIS committed 72 hours before the attack in Paris. There was signs on social media of what's to come, but it wasn't really picked up in a way that was understandable. If you look at many of these incidents that occur nowadays, mass shootings, cyber attacks, even in Pennsylvania, a mall was swarmed by 1,000 kids, and there was fights that broke out throughout the mall, resulting in the mall being closed for the day. That was all organized via social media. So there's a lot of bad actors on social media, and really what we're looking to do is gather that intelligence, use the proprietary technologies that we have in the historical database and a variety of other data points, and be able to detect things that otherwise wouldn't be detected or correlated. So you could continue there, John. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. That's good. Aaron gave a great description of our ability to now incorporate that information and those set of behaviors. We are working very closely and will be announcing within the next month a partnership with a major commercial data provider. And our goal here is to combine that commercially available as well as proprietary information on personal characteristics, correlate that and matrix that to what we're picking up from social media as another data point to help us predict. We're going to be using our big data engine, the information that we're gathering around the threat profile occurring on a company, correlate that to the social media energy we see forming, and using advanced predictive analytics like neural network models, vectoring, and clustering, and our big data engine provide a predictive capability into our solution. Next slide. And so, I think if I was somebody sitting out there, I'd go, wow, how are you guys going to do that? We think the partnership architecture between Soteria and iSherff is going to provide a very effective platform. Soteria is bringing some advanced proprietary algorithms, natural language processing and image recognition, a platform that can identify through social media channels when energy is forming, and you can connect that to the iSherff complete cloud-based architecture, which is delivering a protective mechanism across email endpoint URL filtering, as well as the ability to use known outcome data, known threats, and known penetrations that we have captured, contained, and stopped, and bring that into the mix, and you have a much more comprehensive, effective mechanism for protecting your environment. And so I think when you look at the attributes of the architecture, there are a lot of benefits there. Going to the next slide, I think one of the most important elements here is obviously, our architecture is cloud first. So through our proxy, all the information coming into a company is routed through our architecture. Threats are assessed, threats are scrubbed, threats are cleaned. They do not get through to your IT infrastructure. Next slide. We have invested very heavily in a data center network globally. So iSherff has 35 data centers providing redundancy, providing capability, most importantly, on and off network. So when you are behind the firewall, you are protected. When you're outside the firewall, you're also protected when you go out on a remote or mobile device. And then finally, our big data engine, next slide, is offering us a very important source of data. So we're sitting there, in the cloud, protecting your company. We are seeing billions of events coming through. We are, providing that triple threat protection, but it gives us the ability to take those threats, classify them, identify where they're coming from, understand how they're proliferating and attempting to penetrate your organization, and then build back propagation, data recognition, pattern recognition models, and then leverage into the Soteria intelligence engine to combine social media. Next slide.
Yeah, I'll take over on this one. I think a big question that we've gotten before, especially when we first launched the company, is why Soteria Intelligence? Why aren't multi-billion-dollar companies able to do this or doing this right now? And really, it comes back to me as the founder and the CEO and the team that we have and the experience that we have. I look back many years ago when PostRank was really the first social media analytics company. When they needed an expert to participate in a webinar on social media analytics in the real world, 3 weeks before they were acquired by Google and rolled into Google Analytics, they had contacted me to take part in that. And when large organizations over the years have had a need for expertise in solving complex social media initiatives, they've contacted my marketing consulting firm proactively to have us provide that guidance. And really what Soteria Intelligence is doing is unlike anything that is being done today, in that we're using artificial intelligence to be able to create to create technologies that understand threat landscapes catered to certain clients. So let's say a client in a certain industry is afraid of cyber attacks that may originate from social media. the types of threat actors that may target them may be very different than threat actors that target another company in a different industry in a different location. So what we're doing is really using artificial intelligence to change the game, combined with proprietary algorithms and a proprietary historical database that we've created of past threats, past threat actors, and different data points on who they are, where they're located, how threats were delivered, and a variety of other data points. And when The Guardian was doing an article on social media threats, they contacted us and featured us in that cover story. And also when one of the BBC employees was receiving threats after Jeremy Clarkson was fired from Top Gear, his potential replacement was getting threats on social media, and they contacted us from across the pond and had us take part in an interview to discuss social media threats and how they're really going to change the world moving forward. So Soteria Intelligence is very different than any of the other companies in this space, and a lot of that comes down to my social media experience, but also the team that I've put together, where one of our directors managed all foreign intelligence for the Secret Service, and also one of the other directors spent many years working on architecture, and he was a chief architect of the Prodigy system. So we have the core expertise, and we're really looking forward to working with iSherff to integrate that expertise into their systems to provide more value to their clients.
Thanks, Aaron. Hey, Ed, next slide. So here's the payoff for you as a customer. What we are announcing and is available immediately is a new module that ships with the iSherff Complete product. We call it the AI-based Threat Posture Module. And what the module does is it basically takes the information from our big data engine around your threat landscapes, the attempted attacks, how they're coming in, what type of viruses, etc. It runs the back propagation analytics on that information. We then combine that on the front end with the Soteria Intelligence algorithms and elements of their platform to deliver a threat posture score. The threat posture score correlates the social media energy with the containerization elements of our big data engine. And essentially what you do is write business rules around it. So as an example, the threat assessment is scored 0 to 1,000. And as a company, if your threat assessment is scoring over 900, you may decide to take certain actions. You may tighten up dramatically your privileged identity authorizations internally. You may tighten up dramatically the threat assessment level on web filtering, email scanning. You may make sure that all of your antivirus capability is immediately updated, focused on all zero-day threats. You would essentially raise your perimeter defense, understanding that you could potentially be under attack. When the threat level rolled down to, say, below 700, you may in fact allow greater movement of information, resources within your network, content within your internal and external network, and essentially be able to feel more secure about that. It's a cloud-delivered module. It's available for X dollars per node or endpoint per month. We essentially start with a consulting engagement where we analyze your environment. We implement the iSherff Complete product in your architecture, and we begin to deliver the threat posture module over time as we understand the data environment around your company. So next slide. We're excited to announce the partnership. We're excited to deliver the technology. It's innovative. It's leveraging the information that's available. It's providing predictive analytics to allow us to, in fact, think about more innovatively how, when, why a threat may occur against your business entity and allow you to do a better job of predicting, preventing those threats. We think it offers, a relatively clear value proposition. We're very anxious to begin work with some customers. If there's some folks in the audience today that would like to hear more about that, we'd love to engage with you. We'd love to do the work with you to understand the availability around the solution. So today we have over 3,000 customers globally at iSherff. Soteria Intelligence has a small but rapidly growing number of customers, and we think we're going to bring some interesting innovation to the market. So with that, thank you. Aaron, any final words?
No, you definitely covered it. I mean, really what our focus is seeing threats on the horizon versus, when they reach the front door. We don't want people to be able to make threats that aren't seen. Then when they come knocking, you have to respond quickly and hopefully effectively. We want to see the chatter, identify things on the horizon, and really be able to improve security by using predictive analytics.
Great, and I think there is a quick poll question up there. We'd appreciate your taking that. I think really what we're interested in knowing is, are you interested in this conceptually as an idea? Are you interested in engaging with us to understand how we can better help and better predict and prevent threats against your company? And I think that at this point we'll pause. If there are some questions from the audience, we'd be happy to address those. And again, thanks so much for your time.
So you can submit your questions using the chat box on the right. There already are some questions. Does malware actually get delivered via social networks?
It does, yeah. Malware is often delivered via social networks, and it's funny because looking back to my marketing days, one of the articles that I wrote was about individuals blindly retweeting things on Twitter. So many times you see the title of an article and a shortened URL, you don't know where that URL leads to. And I've seen many large organizations, especially ones that have come to our company for help, saying, hey, we've retweeted things, we've engaged in activities that we didn't even mean to do, but we retweeted things without clicking the links, and we ended up actually hurting our customers or our followers because those links didn't lead to where we thought they did. They actually led to some sort of malware, Trojan, whatever it may be. So also you look on Instagram, there's a trend with people with profiles and content that target certain individuals. Maybe it's a photo of a beautiful lady, all stock photos or Google Images photos. They buy likes, buy followers to seem like they're popular or influential, and they have URLs in their bio. Those URLs and the whole profile are not intended to be social. They're intended to deliver some sort of malware or some sort of malicious attack. So I see that pretty often.
Thank you, Aaron. Next question. Someone is really interested in social media threat assessment. How do they get started?
Yeah, just simply contact us at iSherff. You can send me an email directly, john.much@iSherff.com, and what we'll do is engage in a conversation around your current environment, what technologies you run, what your current assessment of your threat landscape is. We'd be happy to come in and, really on a kind of no-cost basis, engage with you in a consulting project, implement our technology, understand the viability of getting the predictive threat analytics module up and running, and sort of take it from there. So just simply reach out, and we'd be happy to chat with you.
Next question. If someone says on social that they will execute an attack, how do you detect that?
That's actually some of the easiest to detect. If they directly say it, that makes our life so much easier. Oftentimes, threats like that are veiled, where there may be sarcastic comments, there may be other activity that alludes to an interest in committing such an attack. But if someone directly says that, we could use the natural language processing capabilities that we have to identify their intentions by looking at the context of their actual posts. So that becomes easy. And many times it's funny, there are direct threats. You look at threats against schools, many times students say, I am going to shoot up the school. Or the example that I gave earlier, someone posting a photo of a gun with the hashtag shoot the police, and then he goes and shoots the police in Brooklyn where he geotagged the post. So it's really amazing that many of the threats online are so direct, and they're so direct because people think that being online and even having a fake profile, it adds some level of it makes people think that they're operating in some kind of veil of secrecy where we can't find out the things that they're posting, who they are, things like that. There's been many instances actually where people have posted threats from fake profiles thinking they'll never be able to be caught, but they've done something as stupid as signing up for a message board, and on that message board it asks, do you have a Twitter account, a Facebook profile? They've linked to their fake Twitter account. So by running a simple backlink report on their Twitter account, we could pull up that message board and connect the dots and see who they really are. In that instance, we actually traced it all the way back to their personal Facebook page. So we know everything about them, not only who they are, but where they live, who their wife is, where she works, and everything. So if somebody makes a direct threat like that, it's pretty easy for us to pick up. But of course, there are a variety of factors that come into play.
Another question along maybe that same line. What social networks have the most predictive content? You've mentioned several.
Twitter is where a vast majority of threats are posted and where a great amount of content is. The interesting thing is that when people post threats and they post signs of what's to come, they often do it in a way where it is public and it's fast-paced and it's widely seen by the masses or has the potential to be widely seen. Rarely do you see people that post threats in a closed network or on a private page. So we see a lot of threats on Twitter. Actually, over 80% of social media threats we find posted on Twitter. Which is very interesting.
Do you have relationships with the FBI to report information to them?
We're very fortunate in that we do have connections, and as I mentioned previously in the webinar, one of our directors spent about 20 years in the Secret Service on Reagan and Ford's presidential detail. He was assistant director of training. He also was the head of security over at Halliburton and Texas Instruments before coming back to the government, to the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. So fortunately, Ashley Williams, Skip Williams, has a lot of connections there. We have other connections as well. So when we do see certain things, we try to contact clients first. If something is very, very critical, we may also contact the authorities and do so before we contact clients. It just depends on the nature of the threats that we find.
What do you see as the highest risk in social networking sites?
Great question. Well, there's actually a few. So I can't say what the highest is. I'd say one of the highest is people losing their lives because threats weren't identified in time. Damage to organizations in that their reputation could be damaged or information can be leaked. That happens quite often. Whether it's knowingly, information is knowingly released on social media or unknowingly. For example, an an engineering student that's working at a defense contractor doesn't think that divulging things or posting certain things would be a violation of their employment agreement, maybe because they just didn't read the agreement fully or weren't educated on what they can and can't do. But that's a big threat, because if there's a secret defense project and someone posts something on Twitter about what they were working on that day, that could be a very serious problem. But also, the negative impact on operations. When you look at all of the threats against airlines in early 2015, multiple planes were grounded, cost a lot of money. Thousands and thousands of people had to deal with delays, their planes getting rerouted, maybe not making it to their meetings on time, or a family event, whatever it may be. So that's pretty serious. But also, you look at threats against schools. Earlier in the year, actually late in 2015, all LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District schools were shut down due to a bomb threat that was very similar in nature to the threat against Delta Airlines. We were able to determine that it was a hoax, and we're on local television explaining how we found that. But you're talking about 900 plus schools closed down. Parents had to worry about, what are we going to do with our kids this day? And that's very, very disruptive. So there's a variety of things.
We've had several questions about how this will link into the iSherff product. I'll just read a couple of them. John, you could respond. Will this be an add-on to Complete or be part of Complete? Can I get this if I have the iSherff endpoint product? And a similar question, can I get it if I'm just using iSherff Web?
Yeah, the ideal solution is you really need to be running iSherff Complete. And while we can provide some value if you're running iSherff Web or iSherff Antivirus, the real value comes when you are covering your threat landscape in its entirety in a sense of AV endpoint, email, web filtering, connected up to the Soteria intelligence, social media threat assessment capability, and receiving that threat assessment score. And so, one of the things we do with customers quite frequently is we'll implement antivirus, but then very quickly we will move to iSherff Complete. But give us a call, send us an email, love to chat about your situation, and obviously we are super customer responsive, and be happy to work with you any way we can.
And that's all the questions that I have for now.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of all the folks at iSherff, John Much here, I'd like to thank you for your time today. Please don't hesitate to reach out if we can be of assistance to you. And Aaron, turn it to you for some closing words.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate the the sounding board, have everyone listen to really what we're working on. It's been in the works for a while. John and I, have worked together for a few years on this. Soteria Intelligence has been working on R&D since 2010 on predictive analytics for social media. And it's good to see that things are really starting to take shape now. And the fact is that threats are continuing to rise on social media, as are signs of cyber attacks. So it'll be interesting to see what the future has in store, and also as artificial intelligence evolves, looking at ways that we could even improve our technologies more by teaching systems to understand threat landscapes, and also getting data from clients to better cater services to them. So it's interesting to see how technology is progressing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future has in store. And thank you all for attending.